So sitting back against the wall and just giving yourself a little bit of support. So using the wall to support your body. So there's an essence of softening and relaxing. Now with the legs, you can choose, if you're comfortable sitting cross-legged, can you cross them the other way to the way you would normally cross them? Because your pelvis is softening at the moment, and if you always sit the same way cross-legged, which we do because we're creatures of habit, then you'll kind of start twisting your pelvis out of alignment, which is what happened to me, and it's taken years and years of osteopathy to untwist my pelvis. And I've learned over the years to actually be able to sit both ways now, and I can hardly tell. So for most of you, if you were used to sitting this way, when you cross the legs over, if you're not used to it, doesn't it feel weird? All bits of the body pull where they're not used to it. But because I've been changing my legs for years now, I can barely notice the difference. So you can sort of overcome it. Yeah. If you're more than 34 weeks into your pregnancy, sitting cross-legged might restrict some of the blood flow. So you can either take the legs straight out, as some of you have, or you can bring the feet into like a diamond position. And this just gives a bit of drainage for the lymphatics and also for the blood vessels. Okay, so whatever works for you, whatever position feels comfortable for you. And then we're going to work with a little mudra, which some of you will have done with me before. So in yoga we have these little, you will have seen, this is the most common one, isn't it? You've seen this, how many people, you know, this is a mudra hand symbol, hand gesture that we use for meditation. There's lots of other different ones that kind of link into various circuits in the body, and there's actually one for the womb, and we use it a lot in pregnancy as a connection to the womb energy, but also it's a very balancing mudra as well. It brings balance and harmony into the body. So you're going to bring the hands together and then interlace all of your fingers, but then just release the index fingers. And then point it down, pull the thumbs back. And if you look down, it kind of is the shape of the womb. So this is the womb mudra, and it's called the yoni. So yoni is the yogic name for the womb. And then you're just going to rest your hands over your belly, over your womb. And it's also quite nice on the shoulders, so you might get a bit of a stretch in the shoulders and possibly across the chest as well. And then just close your eyes here. And then just connecting in first of all to your physical body. Notice how you feel in your physical body this evening. And just note any changes that may have happened since you were in class last. There might be no changes at all, or there might be some significant changes. You might have had a growth, the baby might have grown a little bit. We might have some new and exciting aches and pains that have manifested. And in the case of some of you, some new and exciting Braxton Hicks experiences. So just notice anything that's changed. And then turn your awareness to your breath. So the breath is the most important element of our yoga practice, and particularly in pregnancy yoga. So the breath is really the vehicle which will help to support you both through your pregnancy and through your labour. So just become aware now of your breath. Notice the feeling of your breath moving in through the nose. Notice the feeling of the breath moving out of the nose. And just notice how the breath is. Is there a feeling of smoothness with your breath? Or does it feel a little bit lumpy, a little bit uneven? And the more we can balance and smooth out the breath, the more the mind will also become balanced and smoothed out. So we're going to use straw breath, which is one of our birthing breaths. It's very gentle, it's very tranquilizing, so it's good to create a calmness in the mind. So at the end of your next inhale, I'd like you to breathe out through your lips as if you were blowing out through a straw, as if you were whistling silently. And this slows the out-breath down, so we bring a little bit of a restriction by creating a smaller space for the breath to come out. And then you can just breathe in normally through the nose. And then again, every time you breathe out, just blowing the breath out through that little space between the lips. Now, some of you might find that you enjoy doing the straw breath on the inhalation as well, so you can experiment with that. So breathing in as if you're sucking the breath in through a straw. It has a cooling effect on the body, so if you're feeling a little hot, a little overheated, then that will cool you down somewhat. Also makes the inhale long as well as the exhale. But some of you might only enjoy doing this practice on the exhale, so you can choose what works for you. Just do a couple more of these breaths. And then you can gently let go of the straw breath. You can gently relax the hands. And just notice how that feels. Notice if the mind is in a slightly quieter, stiller space. Okay, so we're going to come over onto our hands and our knees. We are going to stretch the leg back and also actually, no, it's not going to come out to the side. No, you're all right. So you don't need side space, but you will need space behind you to stretch your leg out at some point. So if you come towards the front of your mat. Is everybody okay on their wrists? So starting here by rounding your back. So tuck your tailbone under. And push your spine all the way up to the ceiling and press your hands lightly into the ground and arch the back up to the ceiling. And then just move the hips from side to side to get a little bit of a stretch in the lower back. And then come back to the centre. And then keep the back round. You want to make a space between your knees for your baby to fit. So again, it's a bit trial and error. So take the knees as wide as you think you need, and you might have to adapt it once you get down towards the heels. So keep the back round, keep the tailbone tucked under, and then ease the hips all the way back to the heels. And again, at that point, as I said, you might want to widen the knees if you need to. And then just again gently sway the hips just a little bit from side to side. So it's a really nice stretch for the lower back. And then we're going to do that with the breaths. We're going to come back with our straw breath. So you're going to inhale, rise up. Exhale, straw breath, roll the spine to the ceiling. And ease the hips all the way back to the heels. Notice how that straw breath makes your exhale longer. So you're going to do it 3 times. Inhaling, rising up. And then exhale, straw breath, roll the spine to the ceiling, keep the back round, take the hips all the way back to the heels with your straw breath. So one of the main things that we are doing with our breath work in the pregnancy classes is to make the exhale longer, because the exhale is the part of the breath that you'll use mostly in your labour. finished 4. Just coming back to the centre. Okay, so from here, I'm just making sure you've got the space behind you. Stretch the right leg back out behind you. Keep the toes on the floor and push the heel away. So you want to really actively push the heel away so that you're stretching into the calf muscle. So if you're getting cramp at night, this is the go-to stretch to do before you get into bed. So you hold the stretch until you can't feel the intensity of the stretch. You need to stretch the muscle out enough so that it's not tight anymore. And then once you've done that, cross the leg behind the left leg and squeeze your thighs together. So the right leg is straight, the left leg is bent, and you're gripping your thighs. We're going to hold this for a couple of breaths. So this is a good pelvic stretch, pelvic girdle strengthener. So when you squeeze the thighs towards each other, you're activating the adductor muscles, which are very important in preventing SPD or symphysis pubis dysfunction. All these dysfunctions all got little letters and names. So then you're going to turn the chest to look over towards your right foot, which is now over the left side. So you're leaning over to the left side, and then just breathe into the right side of your body while you're getting that stretch. And then come back to the centre. And then take the left leg back behind you, tuck the toes under, push into the heel. And again, we're just going to hold that stretch for a significant amount of time. So again, when you first stretch into the leg, you might feel that it's really intense, that you can really feel the tightness in the muscle. But the longer you hold it, the more that stretch tends to ease off, and that is an indication that actually you've lengthened the muscle and it's not so tight anymore, which means it's less likely to cramp in the middle of the night. And then slide that leg behind the right leg, grip the thighs together, and just hold this for a few breaths. Really gripping the thighs so you're activating your adductor muscles, creating some pelvic girdle strength. And then take that leg all the way back, and just come and sit back on your heels with some wrist stretching. So the wrists, it's quite surprising, you know, in all my years of teaching pregnancy yoga, just how much pregnancy targets every bit of your body that you would never think of. But carpal tunnel is really common in pregnancy, carpal tunnel syndrome, another syndrome, and then reverse it the way around, where the wrists get weak. And sometimes they cramp, sometimes they spasm, and sometimes when you wake up in the morning you have a claw hand. It's quite common, and it's just compression in your carpal tunnel, which is your bundle of nerves that goes from your neck all the way down into your hands. And having slept, you know, throughout the night, there's been some compression. So opening and closing things now. Been some compression in the neck and in the shoulders, which leads to waking up like, you know, I've known women that have had to kind of prise their fingers open in the morning, and then have a shake. And then we're going to come into downward dog to stretch out the backs of the legs. But if you're towards the end of your pregnancy and you think, no, thank you, then whatever you want to do. So you might want to just do some cat stretches instead. So tuck your toes under, push into your hands, lift the sitting bones up to the ceiling, and then keep pushing into the heels of your hands. So you're kind of pushing the weight back towards the heels, but you don't have to get your heels on the floor. It's quite nice actually for this first round to just drop one heel and then the other towards the floor. And then bring the knees all the way back down, and then a little hip stretch. Slide the right knee forwards, left leg back, and then just rock hips to one side, hips to the other side. And then come back to the centre, push up, then press back into downward facing dog again. So tuck your toes under, push into the heels of your hands, lift the hips up to the ceiling, and then just ease the heels one at a time towards the floor. And then bring the knees all the way back down. And then slide the left knee forwards, right knee back. And again, just rock the hips from side to side. How are all your hips? You've done quite a lot lately on the hips. Are they all alright?
I can't believe how, like, last pregnancy, my hip pain just got worse and worse and worse, and it was unbearable. This pregnancy, it started off, and then since yoga, like basically gone away. Like, difference is crazy.
I can't tell you that, you know, I've always said this, the pregnancy yoga classes, and I teach a lot of different yoga and have done for 30 years. The pregnancy yoga is for me the one where it can really target and fix so much. You know, it should be on the NHS. It really should. Honestly, it has so much better outcomes.
Earlier in this pregnancy, like before I started doing the classes, which it started way later with my first, but I was just dreading it, and it's just not come at all. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, we can fix so much with this. Okay, and then pushing up, and then last time coming into downward facing dog, and then we're going to come to standing. So if you're in your downward facing dog, you can kind of just walk your hands backwards or walk your feet forwards, or a combination of the two. And if you're into child pose, you can just make your way to standing anywhere you like. Bend the knees, slowly uncurl. And then a little jiggle. It's quite nice to kind of bounce this rebound movement. And I've completely come off the camera. Every week, I never get this right. Okay. So we're going to do a few little side bends. So it's quite nice to do some side lengthening through the body. So have your feet hip distance apart. And your hands onto the hips. And as you breathe in, take the right arm up. And then as you breathe out, you're going to push the right foot into the floor. You're not going to pull the arm over. You're going to lift the rib cage away from your waist. So it's a much nicer, kinder way of doing a side bend. And then you can just circle the arm down, so rather than bringing it all the way back up. And then same on the other side. So lengthen the left arm up, and then you push the left foot into the ground, and then lengthen the waist by moving the rib cage away from your hips. And then circle the arm all the way around. And just do that again. And then come back. I've just had a thought actually about the diastasis rectus, belly binding. So did you do that last time? So we've done hip binding. So it's when you use a sarong or a shawl and you bind. I've used it with symphysis pubis and hip pain, when you bind around the hips. But there's also a belly bind which you can do. So usually for round ligament pain, but it should work quite easily, and it's been quite nice to do a little bit more work. It's called rebozo technique. So rebozos are these long shawls they make in Mexico, and every woman is given one on their kind of coming of age, and they use them. You can see all the, Mexican, they all have these shopping bags, they carry their babies in them, and they wrap themselves, tie themselves up into them when they're pregnant, because it provides a lot of support. They also, doulas use them for birthing. You can jiggle, but I've seen a doula jiggle a baby out, putting it around the waist and jiggling the baby out. So they're quite useful, but we don't have them here. A shawl is fine. So I will make a note of that in my ever-growing list. And I will hopefully put something in the WhatsApp group next week to remind you to bring the shawl, like a sarong. You need to be able to wrap it around your belly and tie it. So check before you come out. And I've got a bag of them. I've got a few spare ones. So I'll bring those as well, and then hopefully I will remind you as well. This list is getting rid. Okay, now that just came to me, and I thought if I don't mention it now, I will forget it as soon as I have the thought. So, I'm going to do a little bit of squatting and skiing. So, this is good to get the glutes nice and strong, works the quads. I'm going to show you first. So, we're going to bend the knees, take the arms up, but you want to keep the body upright, so you don't really want to be here. And sometimes if you go too low in the squat, you kind of end up down here, but it's nicer to keep the front of the body open, so you might have a shallower squat. So that's the inhale, and on the exhale, you're going to keep the weight in the heels. You're going to stick your bum back, take the arms behind as if you're about to go off a ski slope. So you're lengthening the back. So again, you're not don't come forwards because that's going to feel really uncomfortable. The weight is going backwards. So from your squat, stick your bum out, keep the weight in your heels, the chest extends forwards and the arms come back behind you, and then you inhale back into your squat. Okay, it's quite heavy work, so we will need to turn the radiators down now, because then they just keep doing it. Okay, so find your comfortable squat, and then just extend the arms up, relax the shoulders, breathe in here, and then as you breathe out, sink the weight back into your heels, stick your bottom out a little bit more, lengthen the chest forwards as you stretch the arms back behind you, see if you get to go off the end of the ski slope, but please don't do that. And then inhale slowly. Up. And then you can have a rest between if you want. You can exhale over the arms, so it's quite strong work, particularly if you're in the later stages of your pregnancy. Inhale, come up. Exhale, ski jump. Inhale, back up. And then exhale, relax. Okay, same again. And just one more. You've got one more left, didn't you? Okay, and then you're going to take the feet wide. So you might want to turn on your mat and face me, because then you're on the full length of your mat. I obviously got no mat to do that. So take the feet wide and then just shift the weight to one side. Shift the weight to the other side. So it's a nice stretch for the inner groin and the inner thigh. You also want to make sure that your knees are going the same way as your feet. So if your feet are turning in, it means that your knees are not going to track with your feet. So you need to make sure that they all go the same way. Okay. And then if you want to make that a little stronger, we can actually come lower down. And depending on sort of various things, if you've got good hamstrings and or long arms, you can probably touch the floor. For some of you, if your hamstrings are tight or you've got little arms, like I've got long legs and short arms, so for me it's easier to actually have a brick and you're just going to come down, so you get more of a stretch in the hips and a bit of a stretch in the back. So I have got some spare bricks. Does anybody need one?
I've got a brick. Please.
Yeah, so you might need it kind of up that way. Do you want? So if I give you 2 blocks, and we'll have 3 job. And feel free to turn that radiator down because you're right up against it.
Oh, really?
Isn't it? I thought can't it? Not really. I've had trouble with that one. It does its own thing. Okay, so a couple more. And come all the way back to the centre. You can have a little dangle here, so just stretch the legs out a little bit more. And then just coming up, bending the knees and putting your elbows onto your knees. So you need to make the feet at a comfortable distance. If you feel they're quite wide, because we can do this, you know, have quite a wide stance, but to come into both, you probably need to bring the feet a little bit closer together. So from here, drop your right elbow towards your left leg, and come back, and then drop your left elbow, or left shoulder towards your right knee, and then come back. So it's a really nice stretch of the back and the shoulders. So you might find it easier to actually do that with the hands. You might get more of a twist from there. So choose whether you want to do it with the elbows on the legs or with the hands on the thigh. And you can breathe out, come into the twist, and then breathe in to come back. What you want to ensure is that the hips are staying very still. So I'm just going to turn around so you can see. So what we want to do here, we want to get these muscles working. So it should look something like this, and then I'm stretching all the way through the side of my body. If I'm doing this, then all I'm doing is just kind of wafting from side to side, and not much is happening. So the legs stay where they are, the hips stay where they are, which is why with the hands it's quite useful to actually push away from the side that you're moving from, because it keeps the hip in place. Can you see the difference? You push, you almost straighten the opposite arm, and then that keeps the legs in position. So it's still a bit of drifting there, Ellie. So I would put your, and I think, mate, could you have a bit of a wider, because you've got quite tall, and we'll do your legs. Is that Matt giving you enough grip?
Yeah,
that's it. So maybe turn the feet out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, sink down the hips. Now straighten the left arm and push the left hand into the leg. Yeah, can you feel the difference?
Yeah.
Now you've got the stretch. And then come back to the centre, straighten the other arm. Yeah. Now you've got that. Yeah, that's exactly where we want it. Obliques. Talked about those earlier. Oblique muscles. And a bit of QL as well, quadrilateral lumborum. Okay. So coming back to the centre. And you can come up if you want to. I'm going to show you one last one. And this is actually quite timely. This is an abs one, and we don't often do them, and it's just happened on the lesson plan. So this is called pulling the rope. So I'll show you first. We're going to come back into that squatting position, but you don't need to do that yet, because I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. And then you imagine you're pulling a rope, or maybe pulling an anchor up from the ground. So it's not just like an arm movement. You want to give yourself some resistance. So in some ways it's an isometric stretch, because you're creating your own resistance. So you have to imagine that it's really heavy, and you're having to really put some effort in. And when you do that, your abs engage. It's an interesting thing. So it's not necessarily working the shoulders, but you know, feel the difference. If you just stand up and you just move your arm back, what happens? Not very much. Now really pull that arm back. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking for. We want a little bit of tone here. Okay. So from here, same thing again. So you want to really put a bit of effort into it. So if that's whatever you're pulling up from the ground is super heavy, and you're putting some real effort into it, and just engaging your abdominal muscles. And then you can slowly come up. And it's quite nice to just bring your toes in and then your heels in when you have the legs in a wide position. And then maybe jiggle, have a bounce, and see how that will feel. So grab a quick drink if you want one. Keep hydrated, I'm working quite hard today. And then you're going to come to the front of your space. You're going to have your feet hip distance apart. And then from that hip distance, you're going to take the right leg back. And you want to bend the front knee. So you might need to step the back foot in a little bit to make sure that the front knee bends. So the hips are both facing the front of the mat and the back heel is pushing into the ground. So now you've got that bit of a quad stretch, and you need to make sure the knee sits over the ankle. So Ellie, maybe a bit longer with your stride, probably a little bit more. You're really tall, so you can really go deeper. Yeah, because otherwise what happens is your knee goes over the ankle and you're straining all the cruciate ligaments in the knees, which is not great at any point. We want the hips to be level, so make sure the right hip hasn't swung back. Is the right hip level with the left hip? Root down the left heel, bend the right knee, and just lengthen the tailbone a little bit more towards the floor, and notice how you get a bit of an uplift through the body. And then keep the legs pushing into the ground. So imagine you're pushing the feet into the ground as you take the arms up. Relax your shoulders, and no tension in the shoulder. Have them slightly wider than your shoulders. And then reach up through one side. And reach up through the other side. And all the while you'll keep pushing the feet into the ground, so the stretch is happening in the middle of the body, which is actually where you want most of the stretching to happen, because it's where you're feeling the most lacking in space. And then reach both of them up, and then reach the arms all the way back behind you, and interlace the fingers and squeeze the shoulder blades together. So keep pushing into both feet. Now a little squeeze of the pelvic floor. And then you're going to straighten the front leg. Now, if your hamstrings are quite tight, you might want to have a tiny bend in the knee. And we're going to come into a forward bend, but before you do that, it's going to come from the back of your body. So what you're going to do is you're going to push your buttocks backwards. Push the buttocks backwards. This means that your pelvis will rotate over the front of the leg. So you keep pushing the buttocks backwards. The weight stays in the right leg. And if you want to, you can raise your arms over the head. But if you've got high blood pressure or glaucoma, any sort of pressure issues, then you can leave the arms on the lower back. And then lower the arms back down, bend the front knee, push all the way up. Relax the hands. And then you're going to shift your weight into the left leg and just drag the right leg. So just stay on the toes. Take the arms behind you. And then just lengthen the breastbone forwards and let the toes come off the floor. So you're just coming into a simple balance. So on a straight line, from the crown of your head into your toes. And then wrap that leg all the way around. And then slightly bend the left leg so you can really wrap the legs around each other. So you don't really want to gap. You want to really grip the thighs together as if they're tree roots bound together. And then sinking down just a little bit. Take the arms out to the sides and bring the left arm on top of the right arm, and then wrap the arms around each other. You might be able to hold bring the fingertips into the palm of your hand, or maybe bring the backs of your hands together. Try not to pull on the wrist like that, because it's going to strain the wrist. So keep the fingers pointing upwards. And then lift the the elbows if you want a bit of a shoulder stretch. Now, you keep the hands in front of the face and lift the elbows. You might not get them very far up because you're going to feel straight away that pull in the shoulders. It's a really good stretch with the shoulders. Now you can stay with the right toes on the floor. It's very tricky balancing on a carpet with a yoga mat on top. So, but if you feel that you're quite sturdy in your balance, you can just, and I'm wobbling, so I've got a very spongy mat, you can just lift the toes off the floor and just grip them to the outer shin. And then to come out of this, we fly away. This is eagle pose. We're going to fly away. Just open out, and then you can come back into standing pose. Now jiggle, and then back into our train track position, and then step the left leg back this time. Bend the right knee, and then just spend some time getting the feet in the right position. You want to push back into your right heel and make sure that your left knee doesn't overextend the front ankle. So keep pressing back into the left heel, push into the right foot, tailbone lengthens towards the ground, a little bit of a lift with the body, and then push the feet into the ground as you take the arms all the way up over the head. Keep the shoulders relaxed, a little bit of space around the shoulders. And then reach up through one side to the other side. And then release the arms, bring them back behind you, interlace the fingers, squeeze the shoulder blades together, keep pushing into the feet. And then straighten the front knee and start to move the buttocks backwards to create the forward bend. So move the buttocks backwards, so all the weight goes into the back leg, into the back heel. And you can either extend the arms over the head, or you can leave them on the lower back if you've got any of those pressure conditions. And then bend the front knee, push all the way up, and release the arms, and then shift the weight into the right leg, and just drag it forwards. Just a little balance here, so just starting your balance. And then wrap the left leg around, toes onto the floor to start with, and then bend the right leg, so you're sitting down a little bit. Take the arms out to the side, bring the right arm on top, left arm under, bind the arms around. Sink down a little bit again. And then lift the elbows if you want that extra stretch in the shoulders. Grip the thighs together as if they are one leg all bound up. And then if you want to try the balance, you can just slide the left toes off the floor. And then we fly away. Okay, and jiggle. So we're just going to do a couple of labour moves. So you're going to come up against the wall. So this can be quite a nice position to adopt, particularly if you're still at home, if you're going to do the early part of your labour, sort of the latent phase in your own home. We're going to use the Yoni Mudra that we did earlier. So interlace the fingers, index fingers together, pull the thumbs back. We're going to keep the hands upright. We're going to use it actually to rest the head in. Creates quite a nice head holder. Reminds me of a Klingon when I do this. Are you all old enough to know what a Klingon is? And then you're going to come against the wall. So you're going to start with your right foot right up against the wall, and then step the left leg back just comfortably. We don't want a big stretch here. We just want to open the hips. And then place your yoni mudra, your head holder, where the forehead would otherwise touch the wall. And then from here, you're just going to sway your hips from side to side, which is why we bend the front knee, because it gives you that possibility to really get into your hips. So when we have an asymmetrical pose, particularly in labour, it can help your baby get into the perfect position for delivery. So even with a head down baby during labour, they might spin back to back, and we want to prevent that. So giving your baby a lot of space every time you have a contraction can hopefully get them to slot really nicely into the most favourable position for labour. So you're going to come back to your straw breath again, so one of our labour breaths. So using your straw breath, swaying the hips from side to side. You would do that for as long as you have a contraction. And then when your contraction subsides, you would rest. So you come out of the pose. And if you were at home, you could just go and sit on your sofa, sit on your bed. If you're in the hospital, then you sit on whatever furniture you have. And then it's quite useful to swap over, again, because all these asymmetrical poses, you're wanting to create space in the hips. So now you're going to do the same thing, but this time you're going to have the left foot to the wall, step the right foot back and bend the left knee. And now you're going to stretch the arms up the wall, because this is another thing that some mums like to do. Stretching the arms during contractions can help to lengthen the abdominal muscles, and it seems to have some kind of favourable effect. So working with the straw breath again, and just sway the hips from side to side using your straw breath. So these standing poses are quite good towards the early phases of your first stage of labour, when you've still got bags of energy, and then depending on how long you're labouring for, your energy might begin to deplete. So standing up and doing standing stuff for the whole of your first stage might not be achievable, but certainly the beginning of the stages, the beginning of your labour, you might be quite comfortable standing. And then when your contraction stops, you come out with the pose. And then you're going to come down. So you're going to bend the knees, bring the hands to the floor, and then come onto all fours. So I know we usually come onto all fours to do this labour stuff. In all eventuality, you're probably going to be on your wall. So although it's going to feel uncomfortable now on your wrists, you won't be on your wrists, you'll be leaning over your ball, which will mean you can be there forever. How many of you are using your balls at home? Yeah, so comfortable. So you might find that it's much more easier to do, like, 4 hours over your ball will go by in the blink of an eye, whereas 2 minutes on your wrists is a different story. We're going to use the ha breath. So this is a more dynamic, more stronger, energizing breath, which gives you power and energy. So it's just whispering the H sound, and I like to think of it as a silent roar. So it's a really good one in labour if you kind of feel like your energy is sapping or your confidence is going. If those little doubts are starting to creep in, the I can't do this doubts, which every labouring mum has, then utilising this really powerful breath can make a difference. Now you're going to make a full circle. So you're just going to circle the hips all the way around while utilising that ha breath on your exhalation. I'm going to go the other way, so I'm going the opposite direction. And then you can just ease that off, kind of sit back onto your hips. You can see why birthing balls are so much better for your, even my wrists though, I'll say. Okay, so we're going to come and lie down in a minute. And what I'd like to do now is to just do a little bit of bridge pose. So this is a gentle back bend, but I'm thinking there are going to be certain things now, Lucy, which I think you should avoid twisting, because any twisting movement increases that separation. And I'm not sure if the back bend would work, because what you don't want to do is spread them that way, whereas the back bend, it's not going to do that, is it? But you decide. If you feel it's tugging, then give it a miss, and we can try and do some other stuff. Okay, so bridge pose. Now, for some of you, particularly if the glutes are quite weak, so my glutes for some reason they just don't fire. They never have done, and they never will, I don't think, because my body's quite strong from all the yoga. So for me, if I come into this pose, my hips tend to kind of sway around like a suspension bridge in the wind, which isn't very good for my back. Whereas if I use this to grip, then it isolates my glutes, and it really strengthens these muscles that don't normally strengthen. So if that's the same for you when you do this bridge pose, you could also place a brick in between your thighs. And there are a couple around. If you don't have a brick, then you could use, I've got a few of these, so we can adapt with what we've got. Okay, does anybody feel instinctively, yeah, my glutes are going to need a break? You probably won't know. If you don't know already, then maybe do one and just see how that feels. If there's a bit of kind of swinging, then it's likely that you might need a brick to isolate the glutes. So just come up once, see how that feels, and if the glutes are fairly engaged, then we're probably good to go. Does anybody want a brick? You're all better than me. Okay, so just going to do a few rounds of bridge pose. It's quite nice to do little back bends in pregnancy because you don't often get the opportunity. So just going to inhale, push the feet into the ground and gently lift up. And then on the out breath, gently peel all the way back down. So it gives the back a little bit of a back bend movement. It stretches the front of the body. Also gives the quads a little bit of a stretch as well. So it's very difficult to get these stretches ordinarily. And then just do one more. And then I'm going to give you an option. If your back feels like it's still quite tight, you can do the twist where you drop the knees to one side and then the other with your breath. So the knees need to come together. If the hips feel like they're still tight, then you take your feet wide and drop the knees from side to side with your breath. So are you doing is it for the hips or the back? Laura, what's for the back? Back, yeah, legs all the way to, that's it, yeah. And then you can take the arms maybe out to the sides as well to anchor you. That's it. And then you exhale the knees to one side, yeah, lovely. And then you inhale them back to the centre. So those are the ones I think you should miss out, Lucy. So what you could do instead, I was thinking, I wonder what would happen if when you breathe out, can you engage the abs a little bit and try and push your lower back into the floor? What happens when you try to activate your core? So breathe out, draw the navel to the spine, push the lower back towards the floor. And then on your in-breath you can just relax. Does anything happen?
Not really.
Yeah, so this is what I'm thinking. But I think if you did that as a practice, it's a very gentle ab movement, but it's certainly going to start that process of kind of waking them up. So maybe do that every few days. So lying on a hard floor, and as you breathe out, just allow the navel, pull the navel back towards the spine, and try and get the lower back to flatten into the floor, and then on the in-breath just relaxing. Can you feel something?
Yeah.
Brilliant, yeah, so you've got homework now. Okay, so bring the knees up from there. You'll need to bring them either side of your bump. It's quite a nice stretch of the lower back. And you can maybe move the knees around, so really delicate upturned beetle position, I always call this. But it's really nice to massage the lower back and to massage into your sacrum. So you can play around here with what feels nice. There's a variation of this that we use in yin yoga classes, which is called happy baby. Happy baby pose, where it's very reminiscent of when babies are still lying on their back. It's in their first few months and they're exploring their own bodies. It's fascinating watching babies. The first year of baby's life it's got the most accelerated learning of all the times in our lives. So as humans we learn more in the first year than we do at any other time. Very accelerated learning. But they're exploring their own bodies, and it's interesting when they find their feet and they start to play, holding their feet and rolling around. Those of you that have had babies already might remember that process of watching your baby play with their
Sucking their toes.
Sucking their toes. They're so bendy, babies, and toddlers, until they go to school and then they seize up from sitting in the chairs all day. Okay, so we're going to come and lie down for the next 10 minutes on relaxation. I'm going to give an offer. I'm wondering, Linda, would you like to put your legs up?
Oh, like, yeah.
Yeah. So, if you've got a lot of swelling in the legs and the feet, what you can do, and in fact you could use a block or two as well to elevate the hips a little bit more. So, I'll show you. It's quite tricky getting in to the position because you want to be close enough to the wall to get the buttocks against the wall, otherwise it hurts the knees too much. So you have to come in sideways. So you come to the side, get the one side as close to the wall as you can, and then you lean back, and then you kind of have to shimmy around until you can stretch the legs up. Okay, so the closer you can get the side of your body, that's it, then come onto your back. Lean down onto your right leg and swivel the legs up the wall. So lift the legs up and swivel. And you have to do a little bit of shimmying. You have to wriggle around. It's not easy. So again, there's nothing but
elegant.
It's not elegant. Nobody said pregnancy was ever elegant, did they? But that's a really nice drainage position. And if you wanted even more, you could kind of lift the hips up and put a block underneath your pelvis as well. So that's an option if anybody else wants to just have a little bit of drainage. And it may be that you do 3 or 4 minutes and you go, yeah, that's enough, and then you come down. I'm not expecting you to be there for the whole of the relaxation. So did you hear that, Linda?
No, sorry, I missed that.
I'm not expecting you to potentially be there for the whole of the relaxation. So maybe that you do 3 or 4 minutes, and then you decide that it's time to come down. Then you elegantly come all the way back down. Okay,
Don't be snoring.
So, coming on to your side, because you're all over 20 weeks, aren't you? Ellie, what are you again? You're over 20 weeks, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 31.
That's right. That's right. So, coming onto your side, and then making sure that you are supporting yourself in all of the places where you need the support. So you might want your pillow under your head, or you might prefer to actually have it underneath your bum. So if you're getting round ligament pain, if there's any tugging in the abdomen, you might prefer to actually have the support under your bump. So again, you can choose where to put that. So if there's any pain in the pelvis, in the sacrum, in the hips, you might prefer to place a block or a cushion in between the knees. I've got lots of blocks lying around, so if anybody would like one for their legs, just wave a little hand and I'll come on to you. And then once you've got yourself in the position that you're most comfortable in, just allow yourself to completely relax down into the ground. So feel the support of the ground beneath you. So allowing the ground to offer you that support. And then there may be a few little adjustments that you need to make. And it may also be that even 5 minutes into the relaxation that you also need to make an adjustment. As the body starts to relax, it creates more space. The muscles, the tendons and the ligaments start to lengthen, and often that means that a joint becomes more spacious, and that means that we might need to kind of lengthen our spine, change our leg position, anything like that. I'm just going to turn the lights off, but I have got a few battery candles, so there's a little bit of lightness in the room. So just relaxing completely down into the ground. And just feeling all the sensations in your body. Notice how the body feels. And then if there are any intense sensations, see if you can just breathe into those sensations. And so you might have some tightness in the back, you might have some tightness across your belly. So wherever you are experiencing any intense sensations, just invite your breath to move into those spaces. So it's almost as if you're breathing into the intensity, the intention of creating space. And then as you breathe out, you can use your exhalation to soften and release the intensity of your sensation. And in this way we can use the breath almost as a model, as a tool for some gentle pain management. So we breathe into the intensity, so we don't move away from it, we breathe into it. And then we use the exhalation to soften the intensity. So imagine that the breath is working on the discomfort in the same way that heat works on a block of ice. So when you bring the heat towards the ice gently melts. You can have that same sensation of bringing your breath into the hardness of the intensity and using the exhalation to melt it. We can also work with affirmations. So a lot of hypnobirthing works in this same way of putting the mind into a gentle state of relaxation and then repeating affirmations. So you might even want to consider creating some affirmations that are pertinent and relevant to yourself. So affirmations work at creating a positive state. So we never use a negative terminology, we always use positive. So it's not I am strong, I am healthy, I am confident, I am in control. So anything along those lines. And then you can use the breath as well to just mentally repeat any affirmation that you feel drawn towards. So as you breathe in, you mentally repeat the I am statement. And as you breathe out, you mentally release whatever your affirmation is. So breathe in, mentally repeating I am. Breathing out, strong, or whatever word or phrase you want to place. And in that way you're embodying the affirmation internally as you breathe in, but also sending it outwards, offering it into the world as you breathe out. And just do one more round of affirmation. And then let the affirmation go. And then just begin to externalize your awareness again. So begin to become aware of all the sensations in your physical body again. Be aware of the ground beneath you. Be aware of the sounds that you can hear. And start to gently externalize all of your senses as we come towards the end of our session this evening. So you might want to bring a little bit of movement into your body, maybe take a few deeper breaths and begin to awaken body and mind. Maybe move the fingers, maybe move the toes, and then perhaps stretching the body out a little bit more. And then thinking about how you will be transitioning from lying down into your seated position. So when you're pregnant, the abdominal muscles don't function as efficiently and effectively because they're being significantly stretched, and so we don't tend to curl up from the ground, but you're lying on your side anyway, so the best way to come up is to just lightly push into the ground with your hands, and then slowly rise all the way up, and coming back into a comfortable position just so that we can close our practice. Just take a moment to notice how you feel in your body, in your mind, in your breath. Be aware of your baby. Notice any sensations. And then taking the arms up over the head, maybe just having a final little stretch, like a wake up stretch. And then bring the palms of your hands down into the centre of your chest, your heart space. And if you'd like to, we'll close our practice by chanting the 3 sounds of Om, R, U, allowing them to resonate in the various parts of your body and into your baby. So breathing in. Thank you so much, Yogini Mamas, for your time and your attention this evening. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.
Namaste.